Len?
Hey, Jim.
Pleasure to have you. Good to see you again.
Boy, it's been a long time.
It's been a long time. Good to see you. Well, it won't be a long time for long. Len. We'll probably have you on again. Listen, for the audience's benefit, Len represents Cheshire and Meriden and Middletown and Middlefield. He's on the Education Committee, the Critical Appropriations Committee, and also in the private sector world, Len is president and founder of Geodata Vision. So, you are a recently newly elected state senator and right in the middle of all this stuff going on. So give me and the audience some quick first impressions of what life is like in the Connecticut State General Assembly, Len.
Well, as you know, I was dropped in the middle of the session. I didn't get elected in the normal election cycle. I was elected in a special election. So I joined the legislature on February 28th, about 6 weeks after the session began. So that's about a 5-month, something like that, right? It was unbelievable. It was very hectic, and of course, of all years to start in the legislature, this has to be one of the most dramatic, basically. And to say the least, it was hectic. Some of the things that surprised me, the sheer volume of legislation that was introduced. 3,523 bills were introduced. And
in your opinion, Len, let me ask you the first question. How many of those are totally superfluous?
About
to anything?
Oh, yeah. I'd say 90% of them easily.
90%, and of the remaining 10%, Len, how many focused, net of the budget, how many focused on job creation?
Most of them created focus on job uncreation, I would say. I mean, they were spending money and creating more tax requirements, basically. So it was a very, you asked for a general impression. I would say most of the legislature has no clue about what it's like to run a business, what's needed to meet a payroll and that kind of a thing. And most of them are just driven by the idea of big government is the answer to everything. And that's why I think we have a big problem in Connecticut today.
Let's do a little quick lightning round first. In the middle of all this economy situation that we have, the Connecticut State General Assembly, of course, always find times to spend their time on other things. Just some lightning round. Tell me how you voted on the following things, and if you want to put a couple of words beside it, do so, Len.
Sure.
How about the legalizing of marijuana?
I voted against that, just quickly, because basically I believe when you use a substance that is hallucinogenic, and that's the way it works, it really causes you to lose control of your faculties. And people can argue about how bad it is or whatever, but I just don't think I think that's self-abuse of your body, basically.
Okay, so that was a no vote.
You're right.
How about the death penalty repeal?
That didn't come up, actually.
Oh, it did not come up?
It was going to be voted on, and then two prominent supporters of the repeal, Edith Prague and Senator Maynard, Senator Prague and Maynard, announced a week or so before that they were not going to support it. They had met personally.
With Dr. Pettit.
Right, and Edith Prague made her famous or infamous pronouncement at that time about what they should do with the killers of the Pettits.
Oh, yes, I remember that.
That pulled it off the table.
Fairly colorful description.
It'll be up next year, though. Certain of that.
Yeah, but if it came up, Len, how would you vote on repealing?
I would have, at this point in time, I would have voted against repeal.
Repealing.
Yeah. I mean, I'm open and I'm thinking about, the arguments. I think you have to be open-minded as a legislator, but I've always believed that in the limited use of the death penalty in extremely, circumstances that are particularly heinous, or killing of an officer in the line of duty, things like that, I've always felt were legitimate uses of the death penalty. I don't believe we should be doing it every week. But in Connecticut, we've had only one execution in the last 50 years.
And he asked for it.
That's right. He begged for it.
He asked for it.
So.
Okay, how about in-state tuition for illegal immigrants?
Oh, I was opposed to that. And not only because, it's not because I have no sympathy or empathy for the children of immigrants, whether legal or illegal, but basically I felt two things. It encouraged law breaking, it kind of rewards law breaking, and number two, there's actually a conflict with a federal law, 8 U.S.C. 1623 is a law that was passed by the federal government back in 1997, I think it was, and it basically says that any state that offers secondary or secondary education benefits to illegal or non-registered aliens has to offer it to every citizen of the country. So that basically leaves the potential that Connecticut could be responsible to eliminate all out-of-state tuition, which would I calculated would cost the state $100 million or more, and the proponents think it'll benefit 200 to 250 kids.
Now, did that wind up getting voted on?
It was voted on,
And
it was passed, and the governor signed it yesterday, in fact.
And you voted?
I voted against it, right.
Okay. Next was the mandatory sick leave.
Again, I voted against that. That was interesting, by the way. Again, that's one of those anti-business bills. This show, we're not going to go into depth, but I can tell you, just to give you an example, the Franciscans contacted me.
Franciscan nuns.
The Franciscan nuns. They run a number of services for the elderly, and they said, don't support this. This is disastrous for us because we don't have any profit margins, and any additional cost is going to make it more difficult for us to sustain operations. And we're doing a lot of this for the state of Connecticut under a revenue stream that hasn't been changed for 6 or 7 years. So we really haven't been adjusted for inflation, and now you're going to add this. So please don't vote for this. And so I submitted an amendment to exempt them and other nonprofits from the arrangement, and it was turned down on a party line vote, basically. So they wouldn't even support the Little Sisters of the Poor.
So Connecticut now has a dubious, I guess, distinction of being the only state in the United States of America that does this.
Yeah, that's mandatory.
That's mandatory.
Right.
Makes it mandatory.
That's right.
Okay. You gave me a nice segue with your little editorial comment about business unfriendly. Listen, Len, the book on the state of Connecticut, and I experience it when I travel outside the state. I'm sure you experience it when you travel outside the state without leading the witness too much. I mean, there is a perception that Connecticut is a business unfriendly state. And it's killing us.
Yes.
We're losing a lot of businesses, small businesses. And to me, and more importantly, Len, we're losing a lot of young people under the age of 32.
Right.
Some of our best and brightest young men and women who graduate from school and leave.
That's right. That's right. And it's because...
So what is it about the Connecticut State General Assembly that doesn't understand that business equals jobs equals revenue? What's so hard about that equation?
Well, I think a lot of the General Assembly is dominated by people that see government as the salvation for everything, and they see government as the job creator, which is really ironic. Government doesn't create jobs. Government should get out of the way of creating jobs. It's the private sector that creates jobs and creates wealth. The government sector takes part of that wealth and uses it to help. Exactly. So that I have no problem with. But basically, to have this inverted attitude that government somehow is the source of job creation and the source of wealth creation has got it totally backward. And that's one reason why we have problems. The state of Connecticut has a tax structure that's anti-business, and it's got a regulatory structure that's anti-business. So you've got this, plus you've got costs like the cost of electricity, the cost of power. Here in Connecticut, it's the second highest in the country. So you've got energy costs that are disproportionate, you've got regulations that are unfriendly and unsympathetic, and you've got a tax structure that is adverse to business.
But you know what, Len? I mean, your fellow senators and the people in the General Assembly, the House version of it, on Chris Donovan's side.
Right.
I mean, all of these people, including yourself, these are not unintelligent people. For the most part, they're intelligent people.
Right.
What myself and a lot of other people don't understand is how do supposedly intelligent people, I mean, intellectually they're smart, but I wonder about their street savvy sometimes. How are they so insulated that they don't see what the business perception of, I mean, why should I move into Connecticut?
Right.
Why should I expand in Connecticut? And I know I'm being a little bit hyperbolic, but I'm not all that far off.
Oh, no.
Why don't they see it, Lenny?
Well, you know, interesting enough, I had a dinner 2 weeks ago with an old high school classmate of mine who's now a doctor, and we were talking about the same issue, how some of our classmates we were the smartest kids in the class. We were in the top 10%, you know, in the National Honor Society and all that, and some of us went one way in terms of philosophy and others went the other way. Mark and I went on the conservative route, and we were talking about specifically Senator Looney was one of those people that was
Martin
a classmate.
Looney. Yeah.
Yep. And there were a couple of other guys, and I remember Mark said to me, my friend, he said, Lenny, think about this. It's not for lack of intelligence. I mean, you know, our friends are very smart, and we were at the top of the class too, but we have a profoundly different viewpoint on the role of government in life. And you know, a conservative viewpoint is government basically is there to do minimal things to help you out when you're down, but it doesn't do anything beyond that. It's not supposed to be hand out, it's supposed to be hand up. But most people on the liberal side of the equation look at it that it's supposed to be there for handouts. And I think you can see it in a lot of the policies that are being enacted, Jim. It's a fundamental philosophical difference about life in general.